The Varied Life. We're back, and we're going to have a little bit of a discussion here to talk about being an expat and living overseas and why you need to have a backup plan. Now, we're going to kind of get this all situated here. By the way, good morning. I got a caramel latte going. Decided to get that going here. But yeah, being an expat is really interesting. I will talk a little bit first about, the reason why you might become an expat is, and we just did a video yesterday on how your retirement dollars don't go so far in the United States as they do in other places, overseas locations. So, take that into consideration. That's usually the biggest reason why we see people who retire overseas from many different countries, from the UK, from Australia, from the United States. A lot of, I guess, some of the, first world countries where they get a pension or they have some type of retirement savings that they get a monthly income, and they just can't retire where they're at. So, there's some interesting dynamics there. So what people have been doing is going to overseas locations where the exchange rate for their currency gives a better deal, and they get there's lower prices, the expenses are lower, the food is lower, the housing is lower, medical is lower when people are in certain overseas locations. And so if you could minimize your expenses, that can offset things like the recession, that can actually allow people to retire early. Now that's really beneficial because really, when you think about it, you work. I started working when I was 14 years old. I started working at an amusement park in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and at 17 I joined the military, and then I did 20 years, just over 20 years of that, with 12 years overseas, and then went into real estate and. Was going to be all set up. It was a family business thing, and the saying, never do business with family. Oh my gosh, that rang so true. But, had family defraud the company and defraud me. And yeah, is just ugly. The company ended up still owes me over $80,000 minimum. And then had to go through a number of challenges and bankruptcies and foreclosures, and it was just all because family members didn't want to stick to the plan. They cooked the books and took vacations and used money that was supposed to be used for real estate investing and so on and so forth, and they really killed it. I mean, we could have been multimillionaires, but they decided they wanted the short-term, let's go on vacation thing, over the long-term legacy that we could have had. That's a whole nother video. But, you get to a place of where in the United States you have so many expenses, and they're getting worse and worse and worse. And so now people that used to say, well, I'm never going to leave the United States, kind of like myself, now they're entertaining the idea that, hey, I can retire early. So if I work from, 30, 40, 50 years, and I can't retire in the United States, and we went over some articles yesterday about how like a third or a quarter are looking to probably retire sometime in their 70s, but then another quarter is looking at retiring, or not retiring, but working through their 70s. There was another article and a survey that was done that showed a ton of people were just like, yeah, we're just gonna have to work until we die. So that's a big draw. And let's say you do retire in your 70s, when you're 70. Well, life expectancy for men is like what, 77? So you're looking at maybe 7 years of retirement. The last 2 years are probably, if the way things go, health usually isn't the best at your last couple of years. So really you're looking at 5 years of retirement. Whereas if you retire overseas, your dollar goes further. And let's say you retire at 62, you draw your Social Security, maybe you have some other money, but you retire at 62, and then you go to the life expectancy of 75, 77, you're going to have way many more years of retirement and enjoying yourself than you would if you worked until you're almost 70. And like I said, the outlook for people retiring in the United States doesn't look good. The majority of them are, excuse me, the majority of them don't have the money or the savings to retire. But you, but you got to have a backup plan. There we go. So you got to have a backup plan. And case in point is the backup plan that we're talking about. Even if you retire overseas, you need to have a backup plan. I just was reading some information on Malaysia, like Kuala Lumpur and places like that, and they had a pretty awesome overseas retirement system. A program where, if you had Social Security and you had enough money that was coming in that was actually attainable, you could retire in Kuala Lumpur. There was a gentleman I was looking at, and he's been retired over there, pays $500 a month for a condo, like an 800 or 900 square foot condo, has a loft, has 20-foot ceilings or whatever. It's got a view of the city and the ocean, the whole 9 yards, $500 a month. And his budget is $2,000 a month. So it was like, wow, that is really interesting. Well, it ends up that now Malaysia changed its retirement program to I think it's called Malaysian my MMH2 or 2H, MM2H, my Malaysia second home is what it is. And it ends up they changed the requirements to be able to retire as an expat, to retire in Malaysia. And it used to be where it was an affordable amount that if you had like Social Security and maybe some other money and stuff like that, you could, the guy was making $2,000 a month and he was able to do that. Well, now they changed it to where now you have to have 1,000,000 ringgit, which is the Malaysian currency, sitting in a bank. And I was like, ringgit, that's okay. I've heard of it. I didn't know what the exchange rate is. So when I started doing the exchange rate to the US dollar, that's like $215,000, $220,000 that would have to sit in a bank, and you can't use it. It just has to sit in a Malaysian bank. Then another requirement for Malaysia in their retirement program is that you need to have 40,000 ringgit a month income. So what is that? Well, it comes out to almost $9,000 a month. So they went from a retirement and expat retirement program to where, it was attainable for a lot of people to the point of now where it's unattainable. And matter of fact, since they rolled this out in 2023, according to another gentleman, is saying that there was reports that they've only had like 357 applicants for that new pension program. But you have to have like basically $220,000 sitting in a bank that you can't use. You'll get 2-3% interest. But then you have to have an income of almost $9,000 a month verified coming in along with that. And then there was some other fee and money that you had to pay to be able to stay there. It just really just knocked the legs out from under any type of realistic retirement for the average person. So now the people are faced with that are there, we're like, okay, well, I've been retired here. Now they change the rules. Do I have to leave? People who spent, 9-10 years or more retired in Malaysia, and now they change the retirement rules. Well, do they have to leave? Excuse me. Well, it ends up that they were grandfathered in, but the change, it can happen like that. So where suddenly, you bought let's say you bought a condo, you have vehicle, or vehicles, and you've been there, and everything is set. The majority of the people there speak English, good health care from what I've been reading and seeing. It's just it looks really nice. Matter of fact, I looked into it recently and it was like, wow. But then I found out the new rules. So, you got to be careful with where you go, and you have to take into consideration that you might have to go somewhere else. So, gone are the days of, kind of like back in the United States, you work for a company for 20, 30, 40 years, you get a pension, then you retire and live in the house that you grew up in and whatever, have the same house. That dynamic has changed. So now people were able to retire overseas, but now governments can flip the script at just the drop of a hat. And next thing you know, it's like, okay, well, I was going to stay here and retire until I die. Now I have to go find another country. And so now you're talking to people who are, older, and, now they have to move, and now they have to go through, the bureaucracy of, paperwork and immigration with a different country. But really, I think what's going to happen is with Malaysia doing this, if they don't change that expat retirement plan from $8,000, $9,000 a month as a requirement, plus having another $220,000 just sitting in a Malaysian bank. If they don't change that, other countries are going to jump in and they're going to get that piece of the pie. And I think what Malaysia missed is well, they want the big money now. They want the big money, and they sort of maybe somehow they equate money with good character and good morals and better people. That's not always the case. It's you know there's a lot of rich people who are jerks and cause a lot of problems. But again, it goes to the point, other countries are going to jump in and they're going to say, okay, well, we're going to, they're going to see what's going on. Some countries hopefully will take a look at this and they will lower the requirements for their retirement pensions or start a retirement expat program and lower the requirements, and then they'll get a ton of people. And those ton of people, the ton of retirees that have guaranteed income coming in, are going to fuel their economy. They're going to help the local people. There's somebody's gonna get smart on this, but unfortunately, it is a reality that that things can change. You got to have a backup plan. Some people's backup plan is, well, I'll go retire overseas. If it doesn't work, I come back to the United States. Well, if you have the money, that's great. But the majority of people who are close to retirement and even people that are into retirement are realizing with the recession and the downturn and that their retirement accounts and their 401ks are all just struggling, and they're having to continue, or they have to come out of retirement and they have to work again. So as we mentioned yesterday, you look at fast food joints in the United States, and there's a lot of older people working in fast food joints. When I was growing up, I'm 56. I'm going to be 50. I can't believe I'm going to be 57 in a couple months. But when I was young, fast food jobs were for teenagers, were for people who are just getting into the job market, who are just getting their toe wet into working and learning to be responsible and showing up on time and learning those basic things, having a good work ethic. Now what we're seeing is that we've got more and more seniors who should be retired. We have people that they can't make it, so they're working at fast food restaurants. And those people are actually welcomed into the fast food because they show up on time, they do their job, they don't complain because they need that money. Seems for some reason a lot of young people today don't want to do those things. They don't want to show up on time. They don't want to get up. They don't want to, have to put forth an effort and sweat sometimes and work hard. It's just the way it is. That needs to change. But some people have asked me, and I've gotten some messages, and so I figured I'd address this in the videos. What is my backup plan? Now, a little bit of background. The wife and I, what we ended up doing, we sold everything: house, car, pots, pans, the kitchen junk drawer, everything. We took a couple of suitcases, we threw stuff in there, and then eventually we landed here in Korea and retired. Korea is not known as a retirement friendly place compared to like Thailand or Philippines or countries like that that have expat retirement programs. Korea, they do have it, but it's really, really expensive, or you have to be related to somebody in Korea, or you have to be the spouse of a Korean or of a returning Korean. So that's what happened with us. We didn't even know that was possible. So that's why we were looking at Costa Rica. That's why we're looking at Belize, some places in South America, Puerto Rico, Thailand, Philippines, but nothing really clicked. So, since my wife was born and raised in Korea, we met in Korea, and then we got married, and she came to the States. She became a U.S. citizen, and we thought, well, Korea is just not an option. Then we found out, excuse me. Then we found out that she could return to Korea, and they have an F4 visa for returning Koreans who have Korean ancestry. So if you're adopted or you have Korean parents, grandparents, or whatever it is, and you can get the paperwork to prove that, then you can come back on that long-term visa. Now, me as a spouse of my wife, that allows me to get an F1 visa. So that's great. So what happens if, we got an apartment here, we got a car, we've got all that stuff, we're set, we're pretty comfortable. And what happens if we have to leave? Some people say that you should rent before you buy. We knew what we wanted. We had been in Korea for many years. And so we immediately, we bought an apartment. And if we have to leave, let's say if we have to go back to the United States for some other reason, what do we do with our apartment? Well, we could kind of sell it. The recession is kind of rough, so we might lose some money, but we're in an area that we could rent out to military families that are stationed in South Korea, the US military. So it ends up, if we had to leave, or let's say the immigration laws change, let's say Korea government and the leadership decide, you know what, we're going to cut down on the number of foreigners that are living in Korea. We're just going to do away with the F1 and F4 visa altogether. We would rent out this apartment, and then that would provide us with some additional cash flow, which is good. And then we would be able to go to some other country, Philippines, Thailand, Bali, whatever, or some countries in South America or Europe or Portugal, or, there's just a ton of different places that we could go to. So, yeah, retirement here is less, I guess, how would you say that? You see it less here in Korea than you do in those other countries that have pensionado programs, retirement programs for expats, and so on and so forth. Let's see, we've got a question. Daniel says, hi, I've been watching your videos for a while. Keep them coming. I lived in Korea 2010 to 2014, and the wife, Korean, and I have been considering retiring in Asia in about 15 years or so. I can't see the rest of your comment, but let's see if we can click on it. No, I can't see the rest of it. But yeah, it's definitely doable. It's an option. Like I said, my wife, she qualified for the F4 visa. I would qualify for the F1. And then in that situation, you can apply for it at a Korean consulate in the United States before you come to Korea. Or what we did, we came to Korea on a tourist visa. So we had 90 days tourist visa from the United States because we're US citizens. And then once we got here, then we got an immigration lawyer. Wife found an awesome Korean immigration lawyer. The office is just, they're incredible. And yeah, we could have done the DIY forms and run and do everything ourselves, but really, being the age that we are, we figured we'd pay the $550 for them to do our paperwork, and make things simple. It was so worth the money. And matter of fact, we're coming up on 1 year, and my wife has 2 years for her visa. I just renewed mine, so now mine is good for 2 years. And I think it costs like 50,000 won. They filled out immigration lawyer, filled out some paperwork, came to our house, we talked, chatted, had coffee, the whole 9 yards. The immigration lawyer doesn't speak English, but the wife does. But yeah, we're able to get everything done and do my renewal, and it took 1 week, including the weekend. So that's one thing I have to say about Korea is that they're fast, they're efficient compared to the United States and some other countries that I've seen. Some places in other countries, their bureaucracy is, a little to be desired. But yeah, it's definitely doable here in Korea, but it's also definitely doable in other countries. So there's a whole wide world that's available. And so, as looking back, it's like, did I ever want to leave the United States? No, not really. I thought I'd stay in the United States the rest of my life. But it just got to the point of where ever increasing expenses. It got to the point of where, property tax or, the house that we bought before we left the United States, it used to be like $1,100 a year. And then when we left, it was like $1,900 a year. And so basically it was going up $100 or more every single year. So if I was, let's see if we could do some math here. It was like 1,900 when we left, and let's see, it was 54 minus let's say 67 for retirement, so that's 13 years. So 13 times 100, you're looking at, 15, 14, $1,500 on top of what we were already paying. So we'll add that to the 1,900. So you're looking at $3,300 for property tax. Divide that by 12, and that comes out to $277 a month. $250, $270 a month for property tax at retirement age is 67. And then that's not counting the increases in gas and electricity and food and water and sewer and all of the utilities that we use. It just ends up, it's just the increases are just insane. So really, from our perspective, the draw to retire overseas was because of the minimal expenses and making the dollar go further. And I can totally understand why the articles that have been coming out about the United States and people who are like 65 and 70, how a quarter of them said that they're going to have to work into their 70s because of the high expenses that just keep coming up in the United States year after year. So yeah, that's kind of the draw of that. So, but yeah, we spent a lot of years in Korea. My wife's Korean, her family's still here. I'm not close to family. I don't have anybody in the United States. So, leaving wasn't as big of a deal as it might be, or it could have been. I did have a lot of guns and ammo. Big Second Amendment guy. I was a firearms instructor. Had a bunch of guns and a bunch of ammo. The good thing is that I bought everything, especially the ammunition, when the prices were so low, and I had a lot on hand. So I had like a basic load that was in the tens of thousands. So, yeah, if I ever did anything wrong and they raided my house, I would probably be deemed one of the biggest possible terrorist guys in the world. Look what we stopped. He had, 30, 40,000 rounds of ammunition. Look at how many guns and blah, blah, blah. I was one of those guys. I was a prepper. I had like four years worth of food stored up. I mean, it was pretty interesting. But yeah, be able to give all that up was something that you need to consider. So when you're considering retiring overseas, you're probably going to give up family. You're probably going to give up some culture. You're probably going to give up the way that you grew up and knowing how to do certain things and were comfortable. Now you got to learn how to do things in a different way. So, for example, here in Korea, banking is really different than the United States. And you think, how different can banking be? Banking is banking. You put money in bank, you get a debit card or credit card or based on your account. You get online banking and so on and so forth. And it's like, no, it can be very different. So, for example, in the United States, I can go to any bank. I can go to multiple banks. I could go, let's say, I can go to 10 banks in the United States any day of the week, and I can open up accounts in every single one of those banks. I can put money in, and the time after I open the account and they give me my card, I can immediately draw money out. I can write checks. I can do whatever I want, pay online, and everything is good to go. Not so much here in Korea. So when we got our Korean registration card, which is kind of like our alien, think green card, our green card here in Korea, that allows us to open up Korean bank account. So we're thinking, great, yeah, it would be easier to pay bills and do all the things that you can do with a bank account, right? Yeah, very different. So we go to the bank and they're like, oh yeah, by the way, yeah, you can't open, just be sure not to open any other account in the next 30 days. And it's like, well, what do you mean? It's like, what if we want to, what if the wife wants to bank at another bank and I want to bank at this bank? And they're like, oh no, you can't do that. And it's like, so that's very different. And then it's like, okay, well, so, how do we use this? How do we use the debit card, the ATM machines? Is there any fees and whatever? And they're going over the information. And it's like, oh, yeah, by the way, you have a limit on how much you can withdraw from your account because you're new. And it's like, what do you mean? And it's like, well, you can only withdraw 1 million won per day, and that's the cutoff. And it's like, well, why? And it's like, well, because you're new, you haven't shown yourself to the bank to be a responsible citizen and a good risk. And it's like, but I'm not asking for a loan. That's my money. So if I have 50 million won in the bank, you're saying I can only draw out 1 million won withdrawal, and that's the limit for until, how many times? Well, then they said, okay, well, now to be able to remove that withdrawal limit, you need to have recurring bills being paid for 3 months. And so it's like, okay, well, so that cell phone bill, that could be like, water bill, heat, gas, whatever, can be withdrawn, an automatic withdrawal from your account. You need to do that for 3 months, and then they remove that limit. And then it's like, okay, well, we just got here and we're going to buy a car. That's going to be way more than 1 million won. How do we do that? Oh, well, now to withdraw the money for that and to pay for your car, you need to bring in a copy of the contract that you have to buy that car from that individual or that, car salesman dealership or whatever it is. And then we'll make an exception for that. So I still get a little bit of bedhead. So then it's like, okay, wow, that's very different. Okay, what if we're going to buy, like we're going to buy an apartment? How do we do that? Well, you can't do that unless you have unless you have the contract to buy that property and it's been approved by the Korean government, because you have to get approval to buy property here. It's not a big deal. It's just stamp. You put in the application, you have the money or the financing, boom, it gets approved. That's all there is to it. They just record the sales a little bit differently than what you do in the United States. So again, the way of doing things is a little bit different here that can be frustrating. And as we're in the United States, I could immediately withdraw any amount of money as long as I had it in the bank. Here in Korea, if you're new, yeah, and they said we couldn't even do online banking until we had 3 months of recurring payments, of automatic payments being paid. So to build up a credit history as you being a good credit risk for the bank. And here's another thing with banking. So in the United States, let's say, I've got a bank with ABC Bank, and I've got my debit card, and I can use their network of banks that are in the town or city or state that I'm in, and I could go to the next town and I could use my debit card at that branch to get money. Sure, I can use the ATM, but if I go in here in Korea, I can go to a bank that has the same name, let's say Sun Bank. There really isn't a Sun Bank, it's just pulling that out, but just Sun Bank here. And then if I go to another town and there's Sun Bank, or even in the same city that I'm in and I go to Sun Bank, I can't walk in and withdraw money. I have to register an account there because they don't share the information. Because the way the Korean banking is, it's more like an individual franchise under a name. So it's kind of like a McDonald's. You buy a McDonald's, but you can only buy and get service at that McDonald's. You can't with banking. It's weird. I know. It's like what? So you'd have to re-register and open another account at that branch to be able to walk in and get money. So but then I'm not sure why you would do that, but we had to do that, and instead we had to turn around and go back to our bank, get money to pay for some government documents for our immigration applications and stuff. No, it was our driver's licenses. Yeah, we traded in our driver's license, U.S. driver's license for the Korean driver's license. So yeah, a lot of different things here. Some things are like a lot better, some things are different, and some things don't make sense, you know. But if you were born and raised in Korea, that seems normal to you. That's how we do these things here. But if you took that same person and put them in the United States and showed them our ways of doing it, they'd be like, well, this doesn't make sense, or you would have the same type of reaction. There would be different ways to do things. Some make sense, some don't. So you're kind of we were caught in kind of the middle because we're bouncing between, being married and in the United States and, for over 30 years. And then, now we're in Korea and we're back and learning, new banking and new this and new that. Online shopping. Oh my gosh. In the United States, I can download the Amazon app and put in my card in, maybe a minute or two, and I can shop and click and boom, and it gets delivered the next day. I'm good to go. Here in Korea, they have similar apps, shopping apps, and so on and so forth, like Naver or Coupang. It's the exact same thing. So you see stuff, but to open that account, oh my gosh, seriously, it's like you're trying to apply for the nuclear launch codes. I mean, it has to be verified to your bank account. It can be attached to your account, or it can be attached to your card, and that can make a big difference. So when I did mine, somehow I stumbled in and I attached my Naver shopping account to my card, my bank card, my debit card. And so money would go directly out of my bank through my card, through, to pay for whatever it is, and I would get the stuff delivered. My wife had hers, and when it was set up, was attached to her bank account. So you think it would be the same. No, it's not. So there's a ton more steps that she's got to do just to order stuff online. She was able to navigate it with the help of family here, but it's just insane. And the reason for that is because there's a lot of cybercrime here in Korea. And so that's why they limit, there's good reasons for it. That's why they limit the number of bank accounts that you can get. That's why there's waiting periods on getting bank accounts or applying or opening other bank accounts. Like I said, within that 30-day time frame, don't open any other accounts. There's been a lot of nefarious activities, and so these things have been put into place to curb those things. So yeah, it's in vast amounts of spam. You think you get spam in the United States? There's a lot of spam. I'll get text messages out the wazoo saying, oh, this bank, that bank, we found, some discrepancies. Click this link and we can fix it up. And it's like, well, I don't even have an account at that bank. Well, it's a phishing expedition by people who are trying to separate you from your money. And so, yeah, if you ever get any text or links and it just doesn't feel right, or, they spell, it's not your name, but it's addressed to you. Yeah, cybercrime is a big thing here. So you need to take precautions of that. So, yeah, getting used to the way things are done in a foreign country can be unnerving for a time. But just realize that even though my wife is Korean, and even though we spent a lot of years in Korea while I was in the military, a lot of things have changed from the time that we lived here. I think the last time I lived in Korea was, when I was stationed here, was 2002. We left in 2002. And then we went to Fort Sill, Oklahoma for my last 3 years in service. So before I retired. But since then, between then and now, there's been a ton of different changes on the way things are done, and we forgot a lot of things, and so yeah, it was hard. Buying property is definitely way different than in the United States. They don't have like title companies or escrow companies. They have title companies kind of. Escrow companies, it's like, no, you just pay the buyer. And it's like, what? And this freaked us out because we had money and we were going to buy this apartment. But then there's all these warnings about, well, you got to make sure that the person who owns the apartment really owns the apartment. You got to make sure that the person who owns the apartment doesn't have any liens or loans on the property that might be passed on to you, or they're trying to hide it. So you could buy the property, they take your money, but then you end up and it's like, well, there's still money that's owed on the property. I mean, it's so many horror stories. And then they're like, oh, yeah, by the way, you got to pay cash. And it's like, what? And it's not uncommon. There are bank transfers and things like that, but it's still very old school. So even though we are in the age of technology and smartphones and the whole 9 yards, ordering from kiosks and online shopping, there's still times in Korea where it's old school. So yeah, we had to get money out of our bank account on the military base, which is a substantial amount. And then we had to go to a money exchange place to get it exchanged into Korean won. And then we couldn't deposit that in the Korean bank because they had some restrictions and we wouldn't be able to withdraw it. So we had to hold on to that money for, it was a number of weeks, hide that in our apartment. It's like we're scared to death, because this is a huge chunk of our money. And then we have to go to a realtor's office, and then, you've got the realtor, you got a lawyer, you got the buyer and the seller, and it's like they pull out the money counting machine and they're putting it through there and putting it through there. They count it twice. And, the seller takes the money, puts it in a bag, and they go, and then, you wait, and then, everything works out. And then you get the keys, and then a couple weeks later, you get the title of the property saying that it is indeed yours. And yeah, very stressful, very different. It's not very stressful because people that do it in Korea all the time that are raised that way, it's what they know is normal. But for us, it's different, and so that's stressful. So realize that, yeah, there's going to be some difference in how things are done. Now, if you're renting, it could be very different as well. So you need to be cognizant of that. So, for example, renting, the majority of properties that are rented here in Korea are done on a key money. It's what's called key money. So you put down a deposit, a very large, not like, a month's first and last month's rent. No, we're talking about like, you know, 30, 40, 50% of the property price. You do your contract, you give that to the landlord, and then you can live in that property rent free. You just pay for the utilities and all that stuff, which is awesome, but that's a lot of money to do. There is different programs where you pay a smaller down payment, but then you'd have to have a monthly payment as well. But it's not as large as like a regular monthly payment that you would have in the United States. So you'll end up having monthly rent that's similar to the United States. So you can pay a monthly rent in some properties here in Korea, but it's not always going to be the case since the majority of Koreans don't do their rentals like that. So yeah, a lot of differences here in Korea. You can get smaller places. There are places that are less expensive, but again, it all depends on your budget and what you're looking at. But you definitely have to have a backup plan. So not only do you have to get used to a different way of life and a different way of doing things, of shopping and, you know, relationships and hobbies and things of that nature, things can change. There might be changes in a country like we just talked about in Malaysia to where they change it to where, yeah, you could retire there and use, have a pension of $1,500 or $2,000 a month to the point of where all of a sudden they jack it up to almost $9,000 a month. So no, there goes your retirement. Now you got to find another place to go. But with that being said, it's still, in my opinion, it's well worth retiring overseas because we can retire early and enjoy our retirement longer than staying in the United States. So, yeah, it's just interesting. Even though there's challenges and there's immigration paperwork and just a lot of different things that it's like it seems like a hassle. In the big picture, you're still able to retire early than if you stayed in the United States. So anyway, that's what we got going on. Excuse me. The high humidity here has just got me crazy. We're in probably the worst 2 months of Korea, which is a summer, humid, hot, don't look at me, don't touch me type of weather. We're talking temperatures in the 90s. We're talking humidity in the 90s, 80s, 90s. It's just oppressively, you don't want to do anything. So I'm good with cold weather. I'm good with the spring, the winter, the fall. Summer, not so much. So yeah, just, but in the end, in the big picture, it's worth it for us because we're able to retire early and we went all in. We sold everything. And some people are asking, well, is that the only way to retire? Can you ship things to a foreign country? Yes, you absolutely can. There's people that are considering retiring in Korea like we did. And, they said, well, we want to bring stuff into Korea. We want to ship some household goods. We want to ship some things that we just can't part with, and can you do that? Yeah, you can do that. You can ship them here to Korea. You do your F1 and F4 visa, either at a Korean consulate in the United States, or you can get it while you're here. And then I think the time frame is like 6 months that you can have that stuff shipped in and not incur any import tax. So, there's that. But it's definitely doable. We're talking about shipping stuff in those, 40-foot shipping containers on the big boats and everything. But realize that stuff will come into Korea, will go into customs. It'll have to wait a while. So you're not going to immediately get them. So you got the travel time, then you have to get the appropriate documents and the approvals and exemptions and so on and so forth for moving and being in Korea on a long-term visa. The other question I get is people wanting to bring their U.S. spec vehicles, their cars, trucks, whatever, from the United States into Korea. You can do that, but you have to pay a big import tax on that, and then you have to get it inspected. You have to, I think, get it converted over from miles, imperial units to, metric. It just seems like it's not, unless you have some type of specialty car that you just absolutely can't do away with or can't part with, I would suggest selling your vehicle and then buying a vehicle here in Korea. That's what we ended up doing. And car prices are pretty nice. They're not bad. We got a 2018 Hyundai Sonata, which is really nice. One previous owner, it was a rental, long-term rental type of thing. Way better than than what I imagined. It was like a brand spanking new car. So registration is there, one-time registration and fees, and then of course, your vehicle maintenance, gas is about, if probably about $35-40 to fill it up in the United States. Here in Korea, you're going to probably pay about $60-70 to fill up that same tank. So yeah, I would definitely sell the vehicles that you have in the United States and then just buy one when you get here. It's an easy process. It was it was easier to buy a car here in Korea than it was in the United States. We used an app, and you scroll through the app, kind of like CarMax or whatever online car shopping. You pick the car that you want. You say, yes, I want this car. It's delivered to wherever you're at. And then you have 3 days that you can drive it around, test drive it. And then if you like it, you keep it. Of course, you take it to a mechanic or a couple of mechanics to make sure it's mechanically sound. That's kind of what you do here in Korea. And if you say, well, no, I don't like it, I want something different, you just, get on the app and they will have somebody come pick up the car and then you can just search for, another vehicle. It's just really, really impressive. So yeah, buying a vehicle is not hard. There is no yearly, well, there's a yearly registration, but it's not like in the United States where you have to put a sticker on your car every year. No, it's just you pay and that's it. It's all done electronically and it's attached to the license plate of the vehicle. So in the United States, you buy a vehicle, new or used or whatever, you have to go register it, pay a bunch of money, everybody does, and then you get a license plate, and then you got to pay for the license plate, and then every year you got to pay the registration and get a new sticker and you put it onto the physical license plate. Here in Korea, the license plate generally stays with the vehicle. So when we bought this from somebody else, through a dealership or an individual, that license plate stays with that vehicle. The only thing it changes is the name and who it belongs to. So it gets changed to us, and there's no stickers that you have to put on it every year. You just pay and you're done. So that's a lot more efficient than what we do in the United States. I really wish that you could pay for registration like in blocks at a time. I think that would be a cool thing to be able to do. But yeah, the United States is a little far behind when it comes to efficiency, when it comes to vehicle registration and stickers and all of that stuff. But yeah, so anyway, yeah, you got to have a backup plan. A lot of interesting things when you move overseas to some other place. And so for the people that are interested, and you want some more information, and specifically about retiring in Korea because you're in a similar circumstance, like Daniel was talking about, hey, his wife's Korean, is a Korean citizen or was a Korean citizen, you can contact me and I can share some information on what we did, our experiences. It's, your mileage may vary, but I've helped a lot of people come to Korea on the F4 and F1 visas and sharing our experiences and stuff like that. And our immigration lawyer is awesome. So if you want her business card, I can send that to you. Go to, get in contact with me and I'll send you a link for my Facebook page and then you can message me that way and I'll send you that business card. I don't get any money for recommending her at all, but I freely recommend her because she has been awesome. Great service. We're in the Pyeongtaek area, close to Camp Humphreys. Her office and her boss's office is in Songtan, which is close to Osan Air Base, and their office is in the same building as Korean Immigration. So yeah, you can't beat it. They're up to speed on all the newest changes. Excuse me, they have a good working relationship with the Korean immigration staff there, and they've just been awesome. Well worth the money, well worth the money. So, yeah, that's about it. So, yeah, gotta have a backup plan. Gotta have a backup plan for everything, for banking, for living, for medical, for, what if the country changes their laws and suddenly now you got to go find another country to live in, That's why we're going to take the time to visit other countries to vacation, but also to check out as possible locations for other maybe possible retirement locations. Maybe we'll find a place that is like way better than where we're at now, you know. So yeah, just maybe have some medical problems, maybe the laws change, maybe, whatever it is, things change in life. So you just need to be cognizant of that and have some backup plans. So anyway, that's it. Gonna finish my latte here, which is so good. And that is one of my vices. But yeah, would appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel, like the videos. I'm not monetized, but it'd be nice if I could be one of these days. But yeah, since I'm retired, it's just kind of make some videos, help some people out, do some stuff in health and fitness, and yeah, just kind of take up some time and do that, and yeah, just live life and have a good time. So All right, well, that's going to be it. And put some information and comments in the comment section, and we'll see you on the next video. Peace. Good stuff.